The Locker Room podcast is brought to you by the people from DSS Coaching. I'm Ciaran Deely. We run an online CPD service for Gaelic Games coaches. If you want to sign up to our services, where we provide weekly and daily coaching resources for our 700 strong group of coaches, community of coaches, head over onto our website www.dsscoaching.ie. By listening to this pod, by being a supporter of this podcast, you can get 20% off your first monthly or annual subscription. Use the coupon code POD20, that's POD20, to get 20% off our membership services over on dsscoaching.ie. I'm Ciaran Deely from the Locker Room podcast. I'm Ciaran Deely from DSS Coaching, and you're very welcome to the Locker Room podcast. I've got Ross Bennett, Head of Integrated Performance at Queen's Park Rangers Football Club, here beside me. Welcome back, Ross.
Thanks, Kiers. Looking forward to this episode. I think that's 2 in 3 weeks for us now, which is good.
Exactly, we're on a roll. Okay, so today we're looking at the use of video analysis in coaching, so not just reviewing games, but how it fits into the full coaching process. I think it's very important. We're having this talk not as performance analysts or stats people. We're actually looking at it from the scope of being coaches or managers or even sports scientists as well, being involved in the whole process. So what we're doing is we're having a look across different levels, from youth and kids coaching to club and intercounty senior Gaelic games, but also obviously first team level and youth level in professional football. Just looking at how video can be used, how it is used more and more now, but also it's not always used the most effective manner. So in this episode then we're just going to cover using video for match prep and opposition analysis, for structuring match, or how to structure match reviews. Also then using video for player development and individual development plans, IDPs, which are really important. Then working with players individually and as part of units. And finally, how to build player ownership through new systems such as, or relatively new, Hudl, VO, Performa Sports, and others. So first section we're going to jump into, Ross, is video across different levels. So how should coaches think about using video across youth and child, and then first team level or senior intercounty level, let's say? What are some of the general principles that remain the same, but also contrasting with how things can be different also?
Yeah, nice question. I think that the similarities that run across everyone is that the video is used as like an additional tool for like reflection and learning. So like some people learn in slightly different ways. It's slightly more interactive and engaging, and it just provides everybody the opportunity to reflect on moments that like you only have remembering like with emotion. So like when you're in the game, you players and staff, you think something went a certain way, but when you look back, you're like, oh, actually that was better than I thought. So it gives you an opportunity to take the emotion out and to like genuinely reflect on some really good practice or things you need to improve on. I think the youth, we have to remember that it's always an educational tool. So like they're in a learning stage. It's not about preparing for games. It's not about reflecting on game plans. It's about parts of the sport that you're educating them on, and you focus on particular ones as you go through the syllabus that you want to shine a light on and give them a little bit of education on and reflect on. So for example, if you've been working on like movement to receive beyond the back line and create space then to receive like in the pocket in the 10, as an example, you would then have all of your different elements of your team. So can your centre half time the pass with the movement from the front line? Is the midfielder opening up the passing lane? Like everything you focus on within that particular topic would then go back to what you've been working on in training. And I think that's sometimes missed because people just go through the game and just like randomly pick out moments about, well, they should have done this and you should have done, but there's no theme to it. So I think unless there's like some significant red herrings and red flags, like focus on the things you've been educating the players on and reinforce those learning points. So that would be one of the biggest things that I would say from a youth development, and have your syllabus that you're working on throughout the season based on group needs, based on age of the team. And again, that's going to feed into the IDPs. which we'll come on to a little bit later. But obviously, you'd look at IDPs within that stage as well.
Yeah, it's I suppose a bit like how you structure your whole training sessions and syllabus, isn't it? That like in first team level or senior intercounty or senior club, you're reacting to what happened in the match at the weekend and preparing for the match that's coming the coming weekend. So you're constantly like in the moment. Whereas at youth level, like you're working throughout a syllabus linked to your game model of like how do you want to play, how do you want to develop these players, and you should be taking the same approach for the video analysis and using it for those means to kind of back up the messages and the key coaching points that you're speaking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen it done really well two ways. Like I've seen it be like very specific to what you've been working on during the training week or a couple of weeks, or I've seen it constantly be linked to like 4 to 5 key principles that you revisit from every game. So if your key principle is to like regain the ball high up the pitch and counter pressure really aggressively, like every week there's a section on that. If you're an in possession team where your angles are going to be really obvious, you've got a right hand, left hand, and a diamond all over the pitch. Like how does your play support that? So there's different ways you can do it. So I think as long as you're consistent and it's used as an education tool and it supports what you're doing on the grass, I think ultimately the kids are going to learn long term. And the other thing that I think works really well with kids is like this use of elite clips. So like show them like the top level doing it. So show them Man City when they're in possession and the movement they've got off the ball. But then also show them like the first team that you're working with. So in the GA world, like some of the senior footballing team, where do they do it really well? Or the hurling team, where's the pathway that they're going to go to? Like
Yeah.
so you've got realistic clips as well. And that provides a bit more interaction and a bit more engagement. And the other thing is make it really, really engaging and fun. Like one of the biggest things out of research around anything that's coaching is the use of questioning, like players finding good solutions, the emergence of leaders because they're able to challenge things really well, even at a young age, like get some discussion going and get players like really, really engaged in that process at youth level.
Yeah, it's like any coaching course that you're on, whether it's like Talent ID or like the normal technical coaching pathways or sports science. It's on those coaching days when you do group work, when you have to feedback, when you have to collaborate and interact, you're just so much more engaged.
Yeah.
And I know we'll speak a little bit about like scheduling it across the week, like for a senior team, but like these long meetings where people are just sitting watching clips. It'll be great at the beginning, and the energy level just
Yeah.
drops after a while. It's why in school your class normally is like maximum 40 minutes to or less, or little units where you just lose that kind of engagement. What do you think as well about like at youth level where I sometimes hear inexperienced coaches talking to youth players about like what Messi can do or what Ronaldo did or stuff like that. And I always think that, okay, that's great as a bit of like inspiration and it's a bit of fun and everything like that. But that they nearly need to be shown and taught what a player in their position, for instance, in the age group above or maybe
Yeah.
two age groups above is doing because that's their pathway. There's no point in talking to a youth player about what Lionel Messi does because like nobody can do what Messi does, for instance.
Yeah, yeah, really good point. I think you need a blend, but I think you need to be really specific about what you're looking like at Messi doing. If you're looking at him receiving the ball, taking on 4 players and scoring, like that's not the thing you anchor to. But maybe you focus on the minute detail of him like receiving on the half turn. Like
Mm.
look at his timing and approach that he got the ball. That's how he created the space. And then you're right, like have a look at the age group above you, have a look at your first team. So here, we want to
Mm.
show like elite levels and all of our youth teams have to go and watch first team game because ultimately
Yeah.
that's your direct pathway. It's not Champions League. Like you're here at the club trying to get into the first team. So I think as long as you're very specific and like realistic with your clips, it's good to give a blend and a variety to try and enhance that learning process.
Yeah, I like the thing as well about the child player where they you give them a task of going away and giving them coming back with some clips of like their favorite footballer, Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever, or their favorite ever goal, or you're kind of engaging them and in some ways fostering like a love for the sport
Yeah.
because especially nowadays, like amongst kids, they're not watching as much. like proper games and sport. It's clips. It's all like little clips on TikTok or Instagram or X or whatever it is. So you're trying to kind of guide them along in that journey of that love for sport in some ways.
Yeah, and I think it's also about educating them. So when they do watch the games, they watch it for a slightly different lens. So
Mm.
like they're not looking at, the goal because he scored from 40 yards, but they're looking at their position, like how does the wide player play off the eye line of the fullback? Or if you're a centre half, when do you engage and get pressure on the ball? You start to look at things that you're being coached throughout. So it's all about education and making it as interactive and as fun as possible within the framework.
Okay, great. I do like as well the way you were saying about like it might you as a coach looking back over the video, it may reinforce what you saw. For instance, with like kind of in some ways objective data or objective video, but
Yeah,
also it might change your opinion. You know, that you had a feeling from a match, but actually you might come out of the game and go, you know what, actually, our number seven, as an example, did really well, was up and
yeah.
down the line and received and was a little bit unlucky with a few balls. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and just on that, like I always found from a coach perspective, I would never, unless you've gone out there and been like destroyed 6 or 7-1 and just had a horribilis, I would never really give like really, really direct feedback unless it was an effort thing and an application, because I do feel you miss so much in the moment. Like you do miss those details. As soon as you watch it back, it's a completely different game both ways. And that's when you can give a little bit more constructive feedback.
I do like with those individuals, and we'll come on to the IDPs and individual work of like stopping a video in a moment.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
let's say you know that the player is giving the ball away or whatever, but like asking them then, okay, what were you thinking? What was
Yeah,
your intention?
yeah,
And then maybe what would you potentially do differently another time? Because during the game, like a player makes a mistake, let's say, or picks a wrong option, if you want to call it like that, and there might be a reason,
yeah.
when you go and speak to and obviously you can speak to the player on the day as well, of course, but the use of video is so powerful where you can say, well, what were you actually thinking? And they may have been trying to do something completely different than what you thought. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to.
Yeah, and it comes down to like, is it an intention decision making or is it an execution? And that's when you can really break down the detail of what it is. I totally agree.
The next section we're going to move on to then is match preparation and opposition analysis. So, how should coaches balance looking at their own team versus the opposition? And maybe you can speak a little bit about your own experience of what you've come across in the clubs.
Yeah, and I guess this transitions quite nicely on from the youth to a bit more like adult feel and preparation. So I guess like a couple of folds. And it depends on what level and resource you have, of course. But I think there's two things throughout the week. There's a reflection and analysis based on the previous game. So, like, have you executed your game model, your game plan, and evidence of that you're going to review pretty quickly after the last game? Because if you don't review it quick enough, it loses power around feedback reflection. So the next training session, I would say, like, is definitely geared around feedback and reflection. You would then switch. So as soon as you start going into your main training session, so for us in professional football, it's the -3, 11v11, tactical work's going to be dripped in. You must then start to look at like your game plan for the next game. And that is going to have an element of like how we as a team are going to like beat this next team, like how we're going to go about executing, and also what do we think we can exploit from an opposition and what their threats and dangers are that we need to just nullify. And there's lots of different opinions around how this is done. Like some people, we've worked with many people here when we was at QPR was like, don't worry about the opposition. It's all about us. Like for me, if I was to put a percentage on it, 75% is about you, like, and how you execute the game plan. But 25% is about little nuances and details of how you can maybe switch play quickly because they're not very good at shuffling over, or they might have a fullback that you think defensively we can really get at him. So we might change some matchups. But then they might have a threat like in behind. So we might have to drop the line 5 yards because they're really quick. These little details now and then, I think, feed into the game plan. So it's
Yeah.
about how you balance the information you get from opposition and how you then impose your style on the game. And that's the art then of the head coach to go and deliver that.
Yeah, I like that. It's a nice, simple approach of like 75% on yourself and 25% on the opposition. And that may change. I'm trying to think, like it might change in, I don't know, preparation for coming up against a really high quality team or preparation for a final or maybe the stage of the season that you're at or
Yeah.
how strong you are. But in general, it's still a good guide, I think. Okay, what's the right balance then between giving too little and too much information? And I think I've experienced both here, where I've worked, I guess, alongside managers or under manager or other coaches who have taken the approach of like they do not want to give information. It's like they gather all this information for themselves
Yeah.
and they come up with a game plan, but they don't want to, like, for instance, give it to the players and say too much. And also versus I've worked with alongside a coach previously where they were obsessed with the opposition and everything is like on the opposition and everything, there's loads and loads of information on that other team. So yeah, what's too much and what's too little? It's quite
So
subjective.
it's very subjective and hard to put an exact on it.
Yeah, of course.
I think if you're going to swing one way, like I do think it's better to give the players more info than less info. Like I think
Mhm.
in the modern day now,
Yeah,
with the expertise and the caliber of player coming through and the understanding and knowledge they're gaining at youth level tactically, I think it's probably better to err on more info. However, we spoke about like information last week around assistant coach and like the amount of information you give players. If you're reeling off like 12 to 14 team objectives and you're giving loads of detail around it, they're not going to be able to retain all that info. I think you have to use your common sense. So key points. I think number one is like, have you got consistent philosophy and principles and a style of play that you're going to revisit week after week and just keep reinforcing those messages? Because I think if you've got that, it makes the game plan very simple. Like, unless you're radically going to change to go from a really aggressive high pressing team 4-3-3 to a 4-4-2 low block, then that becomes a significant change that you're going to have to address. But unless that happens, it's about little bits of info about the opposition that you can exploit or have to be aware of. And I think
yeah,
that's simple, two or three key points that you could probably get across the team. This is how we're tweaking it slightly this week. However, our identity, our style, these are our four main principles: in possession, out possession. This is how we're going to play as usual. So I think if you set the framework really well, I think it's you're only giving like slightly like nuance, additional info to take on.
yeah. I do like the approach of nowadays that to give more information to players because I think players are very well educated. They're very knowledgeable about their own game, about themselves, their own team, and about other teams. They're highly tactically literate. They're also digitally literate as well.
Yeah.
Everybody is very used to using iPads, their phones, laptops, everything like that. So I would take that approach also without overloading them too much. Um, okay, the next section I'm going to kind of squash together because I think it's quite interesting. It's about structuring your match reviews, and I think we've already touched on how you build a kind of an effective and simple match review because those key points, keeping it short, keeping it simple, I think are really key. My only advice to anybody on that, any coach out there, is that what you're doing is probably too long. No matter how long it is, it's probably too long. Like if
Yeah.
you can squeeze it into a 10, 15-minute meeting with bite-sized messages, go for that rather than like your half an hour or longer. So leaving that aside, so how can we structure these meetings across the training week? So pre and post training. And I know you briefly touched on like looking at the reviewing the previous game and before moving on to kind of previewing the next game. But like
Yeah.
I've experienced in the Gaelic, or both of us have experienced the Gaelic world, but I'm interested, like you've worked under a number of different managers and head coaches now. And I do remember some of them did like bite-sized sessions across the whole week
Yeah.
versus I'm sure people did it differently than that.
Yeah, that's probably been the common theme amongst, I'd say, probably the most, modern managers the last three or four that I've seen, or head coaches through here. So review on either Monday or Tuesday, pretty quick, 24, 48 hours post game. Let's make sure we review, and we'll come to the structure on that in a
Yeah.
minute. And then I think like game plan, like some people do like one game plan and just give overall, like these are our main points. Some would split it into in possession, out possession over 2 days. And then some would then do a separate set piece meeting. Like these are the specific strengths this team have at set pieces. This is where we can exploit. So within all of those in, out possession and set pieces, you've got elements of opposition and us.
Mm.
I probably think three across the week personally is enough. Set pieces you might blend into an out possession and the in possession ones into in possession, or you might just do a pre-match. And if you want to split it into two over a part-time model program, so a review and a pre-match. But I think like really important, just to go back on the review, I think like your 3 to 5 key team objectives that you're asking the team to deliver on. This is what's going to get us over the line. This is what we think. These are the tweaks that we're changing to the game style. You review them and you review them both positive and you review them negative. Because if you've done really well and you've executed 4 out of the 5 objectives really, really well through video analysis and stats, show that to the players, reinforce the message, because that's how you're going to get like I guess a repeat of that same performance in future weeks.
How does that look then? Like in a full-time program, is that, players in breakfast, uh, even before prehab, then it's little bite-sized meeting, then down to prehab, then
Yeah.
out onto the pitch.
Exactly that. So breakfast, 40, and then like individual prep and treatment and pretty casual for 45 minutes, individual meetings. Coaches have opportunity to do that. Then they'll go in for a 15 to 20 minute max session. So pretty fresh in the morning, concentration is going to be high. They've just been fueled. So attention span to be quite good. Then they go into prep, then they go out to train. And I really like that. And then the afternoons then are used for like small group meetings, specific detail about individuals, IDP meetings where you can actually like talk a little bit more extensively about whether it's progression of IDP or whether it's about a unit specific review or preview ahead of next game.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, it's a good point about like morning time being fueled up correctly, being alert, being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed before your session, because obviously after a session, everyone's a little bit tired. You might be wanting to get off home or whatever it is. You need to fit it around gym session maybe or some, medical care or whatever it is. So I think that's important. I think in terms of like the Gaelic Games world as well, like we previously tried to follow a model somewhat like that, where we would have, if we have a game on the Sunday, the training then on the Tuesday, we would do a pre-session review of the match. And again, try and keep it really short and everything like that, bite-sized, 20 minutes. And it works well before the session because everyone's anxious to get out onto the pitch. So it's like it's easier to keep it short, I think. And then we would have done where if we were training then on the Thursday or the Friday, that's where we would look at the next game, the kind of preview of the next game. And ideally, again, before the session, because it just means that those key messages about the opposition team, but also about yourselves, you can then go out onto the pitch and actually work on those specific things. And whereas if you're doing it after the session, I mean, everything is done. The work is done in the
Yeah.
week, and it's just talk at that stage, really. So I think
Yeah.
that's quite important.
The way I've seen it that's so powerful at both part-time and full-time models is like here's our review. Like here's the certain things that we didn't get quite right. This is going to be really important for next week. So today when we go out to train, we're going to work on this principle, like
Yeah,
our time into press, our second man, you didn't read the trigger, these sort of things. This practice is going to help with this. And then
yeah,
it cements things together. And then your preview is like at the weekend, they play a really high line. Look at the space we got in behind. When you see this trigger, play the ball into the space. We're going to work on that in our MV11. This is going to be the key focus. And it just knits everything together. So you've got different resources of like learning tools to help them go into the game.
yeah. And I think I've come across like inexperienced coaches or managers, or maybe ones who are not so open, will think that, well, I don't want to focus on the opposition, and build them up to be something great and everything like that, which I 100% understand. But really, those sessions are about, okay, how we can limit their dangers, for instance, but also how we can exploit their weaknesses. So ultimately, it all comes back to you
Exactly
as
that.
a team,
And
doesn't it?
and that's the key. It's like take bits of info that are relevant about the opposition and then like empower you to like, how am I going to either stop them or do a really good thing for us, be really positive for us. So
Yeah.
always flip it. It's always about us. And you use the info as a vehicle to just navigate different ways that we can find solutions. That's all.
Yeah. Just lastly on that, an additional question. When at first team level for away games, so let's say you travel up on the Friday, you might be going to Manchester, you're in the hotel that night and you've got a game the next morning. Do you ever experience then the head coach like doing an additional analysis Friday night or Saturday morning before the game, or how does it
Yeah.
work?
The only one that they would really move is a set piece meeting, like to a Friday afternoon. Everything else would be kept pre-training on the Friday at training ground. You'd
Right.
have maybe a set piece meeting in the evening, maybe some unit meetings. There's an opportunity
Mhm.
to actually get some either individual or unit stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously your pre-game like presentation or your pre-game meeting will have snippets of everything you've gone through throughout the week. So
Yeah.
like reinforcement, maybe saying about opposition, maybe about examples of how we're going to impart our strengths on them. And this is where we've done it well. This is what's gone good in training. So the pre-match meeting actually is quite a nice example to knit all of that together and
Mm.
send them out into the game with some clear pictures to go
Yeah.
to go to battle. Yeah.
And that's it. That, like, I mean, we would have done it with London. That's a pre-game meeting that morning in the hotel where you're just reinforcing all the messages and everything like that.
Yeah, or even like as just before you leave the hotel. So like as
Yeah.
close as you can before travel, like two hours before kickoff, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of switched on. Okay, great. All right, moving on to the player development, IDPs and unit work. And I know we briefly kind of touched on this, but how important video or how important it is that video can support player development and IDPs, so individual development plans. And I guess just like maybe you can speak about how this is predominantly in the youth level, but also, can go all the way to senior inter-county to first team level as well.
Yeah, look, I don't think there should be much difference between youth and senior, to be honest. Like at the young level, you're not talking about specific IDPs. It's just like review of like fundamental skills in the foundation phase and stuff like that. But once they start to specialize into a position and have some really specific things that you think are going to make them successful long term, they come up with an IDP program that's relevant to them, i.e., midfield player, receiving on the half turn, and everything around receiving on the half turn, movement to receive, awareness to receive, execution of receiving skills, passing forward, when to pass forward, not to pass forward. Like all of these things then must be reviewed, i.e., like video footage and predominantly from training and games and good examples and examples where we can get better. But the further up the pyramid you go, the more we have to utilize some stats as well alongside video. And that's something
Yeah.
where these IDPs are shifting towards. So one of the biggest questions all of the youth coaches here that we're having right now is, well, how can you actually show me that the work you're doing on the grass and everything around video is making this player better at receiving on the half turn? So we are now fortunate enough to have like objective data coming in from both our A teams, dev team, and first team games. So you can get like receiving opportunities to play forward as a number and a percentage of how many times did they play forward when they received the ball. So you've got these snippets of video and stats that over time, you're saying all of this work that I've worked on as in possession centre midfielder is hopefully trended in the right direction. And if it's not, then is it the process? Is it the player? What's stopping the player getting better? So I think that's how you support. And then obviously the process is you sit down with the player every so often, you review individual clips, they get clips individually clips up for them and they have to take some accountability on it, which we'll come on to with some digital resources and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you're just, again, using it as like confirmation of learning and trending over time. That's the biggest thing I can say.
It can be helpful, can't it, in like player review meetings, in the underage where it's just reinforcing your message. It's not like you sitting there as a coach just saying what you think or what you believe or your opinion. You're like showing examples to help them keep developing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. And I think the key thing is like keep the IDP fairly consistent
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
an IDP is not going to radically change over 6 weeks. Like
Yeah.
you've got 6 to 8 game opportunities within that period to like showcase some trend, but like you've picked those 2 or 3 things because that's what's going to make that player in that position like hopefully as good as they can be and successful. If you're chopping and changing every 6 weeks, I think the effect is very minimal.
Yeah, yeah, no, agree completely. Yeah. Um, then just as regards units, so what's your experience of working with units of players of what you've seen and the use of video analysis? Because that
Yeah,
I think like in the Gaelic games world, we probably don't see that level of detail as much, but it's certainly going there.
Yeah, I think the unit stuff is really, really good and beneficial. I think it's beneficial for a couple of reasons. I think it knits that unit together, like by doing some
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
within smaller groups. So,
Yeah,
yeah, you see it over the years. The goalkeepers always have a close bond, don't they? But they're the only position on the team that players are one. So,
yeah. Yeah.
so we always get the goalkeepers in with the defenders. Like they always join the defensive unit team because
Okay,
the
good,
the
good.
one
Yeah,
goalie and the 3 or 4 defenders, depending on your style of play, they're
yeah,
going to have to make effective decisions together.
yeah.
So essentially it gives two opportunities. It gives you opportunity to review like things in really good detail. So like you give the team 3 to 5 main points, but then you might give each unit another 3 to 5 points based on their
Yeah,
cohesion. So
yeah,
how do you individually support, but then how are you within the team? So I think a unit meeting once a week, and it also provides a platform for each player to like engage and interact and I guess have a voice, which is really important as well. So it's twofold. It's tech tac detail, but it's also psychosocial, like in terms of interaction and
yeah.
leadership qualities and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. And you said already that this would generally be done in the afternoons, like after training, after lunch, where you're grabbing an additional bit of time. And maybe that's why in the GA world, we've yet to see that embedded so much because like the lack of time,
Yeah,
and I'm not
yeah.
saying that it's not happening. I know at senior into county level it is happening, but yeah, there is an issue of time there.
And I think that's where the next like question will come into it when we can utilize like online platforms. So like
Mm,
you could actually set up
yeah,
a group of like a backline group or defend or
yeah,
yeah, center back group and like have a coach or an analyst, whoever you think's appropriate, like start to
yeah.
gain some conversation around these clips and get some player ownership on there as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, agree completely. Okay, well, that brings us nicely to the last section then about player ownership and digital interaction. So, how important is player ownership with access to their own clips? Because that certainly is a question now, and also how that can be used, to speak to the player individually about their own clips.
Yeah, I think it's massive if you want that player to ultimately like achieve their ceiling and learn the maximum amount they can. Like number one is the minimum amount of info they're getting within the team, like analysis sessions, that should bring them to a certain level. So if you've got a player that doesn't tap in or doesn't really buy in, like that's sometimes they don't buy into watching
Yeah,
their own clips and stuff. That can be the case, but I do think that's changing now. But then you are expecting the player to go through clips. Like there's clips now in the professional world of like, here's all the opposition number 7 clips. So if you're a fullback, you can
yeah,
watch them. If you want to, you can watch as much detail as you want over the last 10 games, like and get a feel. Do they receive off the front foot? Like how do they move? These sort of details without becoming obsessed with the opposition. They help you in your approach to that game.
yeah.
But also within group unit stuff, people will clip things up, send them, get some interaction. I think from a learning perspective, the ones that interact and engage the most hit their ceiling, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, with the digital platforms now, like Hudl, VO, Performa Sports, like there are so many. How how can they be used then? I mean, I remember, and I'll speak a little bit about in the Gaelic football how we use, but how can they be used with players then to interact with them? Let's say.
Yeah, I think just like that, like there could be some clips like clipped up, sent to them
Yeah,
with some questions. I remember when I was working with the 15-16s here at QPR, I had a centre half who's now in our dev team. And he would, on a Sunday after the Saturday game, he would send me like privately a couple of clips around like safe side defending and triggers to drop off. Now, the reason he was at that level of detail under 15 is because he engaged in these conversations.
yeah,
Like he absorbed the info and we had a bit of a connection because I was a centre half anyway.
yeah,
But like he absorbed the info and then he engaged and questioned further and was like, actually, I'm not sure I needed to be safe side there, or should I have been channel side because I would have won the race a bit quicker.
yeah,
These
yeah,
sort of things, like that's how you catapult your learning, by putting yourself out there and being a little bit vulnerable.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that both ways, like from coach to, and it's a discussion. It's not like you should have done this because of, it's like, hey mate, what did you think of here? Or when you
yeah,
jumped to go and intercept, you got rolled there. Was it timing? Was it strength? You just start asking a few questions.
yeah.
And that's how they learn ultimately over time.
Yeah, I remember I had it with and it's been a great week for the Wexford football team with promotion from Division 3 to 2,
Congrats.
unexpected. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, great for the county. But like in the first year under John Haggerty, I did a bit of work with them where I was traveling over to Wexford once per month for a week or a few days, and then being involved in training, interacting with them, and we had the access to Hudl platform, which was great for filming like games and also some training sessions and everything. And then it meant that I could interact with those players from London, either individually, where I would clip up a few bits, put them into a playlist, and kind of say, okay, John, what did you think about there? What could you have done differently? Or what were you thinking about? And also in units as well, it could be all the forward line. I would do up a few clips, but also, like you said, an individual player might do a few clips and send it back, privately. And again, it's the same. It's a two-way conversation. Like it can't be the manager or the coach telling the player what they had to do there. It's like a
Yeah.
discussion, where
Yeah.
you're creating that space.
Yeah, and that's where like we spoke before about like what makes a good assistant coach, but that's where your supplementary coaches and
Yeah,
selectors, that's where they chip in with the detail because
yeah,
as you say, like the head coach is managing the vehicle, like these
yeah,
other bits around it. That's where you got your two, three selectors who are like taking units each and in charge for. But you're only as good as what you put into it, both from a staff
yeah,
perspective and a player perspective. It is out of hours, like
yeah,
find pockets of time on your lunch break and be obsessed with that side of the
yeah.
game.
Yeah, I do remember as well the last thing that we did in with the London team where we got defenders to produce a few clips of the opposition attackers and actually presented it back to the team. And I thought that was powerful in terms of like they were individually looking at those players and they had to speak about it and also show the other players. So that's not always the head coach or the manager. And I know there can be issues as regards like putting too much of a burden on players, time and everything like that, especially in the Gaelic football world or the GA. But also like you have to make sure that they're comfortable doing that. And lastly, that their message is, or their point is on message with
Yeah.
the overall message. So
Yeah.
I would say with that, it's tricky. Make sure you have the right environment, make sure you've got the right players and everything.
Yeah, I think it works twofold. If you've got a really young squad where like you're
Mm,
actually like teaching them the game and you're going to accept that some of the stuff they say might not be the right solution, where you can then jump in and help them, that's fine. That's fine as a process. But then
yeah,
also if you've got like a couple of senior leaders in there that have got unbelievable detail and have been really good professionals or players of the game, then I think you utilize those people to impart knowledge on others.
yeah. Okay, great, Ross. Anything else you wanted to chip in with about using video analysis? Or I mean, my summary point is like for coaches is get some experience doing it, even if
Yeah.
it's for your own experience. You might be working with an underage um, Gaelic football club team, and they don't need loads of video analysis, but for your own development, it can be really good. And like you said, you can make it fun, you can make it interactive. It doesn't have to be a serious, like sit down analysis meeting. It can be good for you and good for the players.
Yeah, I echo that completely. So, as you know, I run my son's under-8 team, and with huge success this year. But we get one of the parents films all the games on the phone,
Oh,
like they just
brilliant.
film it and it gets clipped. They just send it out. I sometimes once every 2 or 3 weeks show them on the phone next to training, like a really really nice bit of play where people
Yeah,
have taken on board. I don't know, their receiving skills, or is a really nice connection with 2 or 3 players. Like, and I only ever show positive stuff, nothing else.
yeah,
But like they're like all around the phone or the iPad buzzing off it. So you
yeah,
can create some really nice reflection tools. And for coaches, like use it for taking emotion out because
yeah.
when you're in the moment, like you're overly positive or overly negative around a certain moment, step back, have a look at the video and put some perspective onto it.
Yeah. Do you know, players love watching themselves play. They love the clips. I loved that myself as an adult, as an underage. I would love just watching different moments, things that you remember. So remember that. And also as a coach, like I would also echo what you say about like show the positive, show some of the
Yeah.
good stuff, reinforce the good messages. Because often like the bad messages, yeah, they know that already. And it can be done I think maybe individually with that person, just a little, grab them to the side and kind of show them and say, okay, what could you have done differently? But in a team meeting at underage, focus on the good stuff, the
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. And unless I think as you go up the pyramid, you could talk about like team, like
Yeah,
things that could improve. So like the timing of movement, out of possession, or the triggers to press off someone else like that. That's quite good team learning. But you're right. In individual mistakes, you don't need to pull that up that somebody lost the ball. They know they lost the ball. So I totally agree. And coaches love watching their teams do good stuff as well. So tap into that. Like you can be
yeah,
proud of that. That's what you've coached. Use it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Thanks, Ross. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Gears.
The Locker Room podcast is brought to you by the people from DSS Coaching. I'm Ciaran Deely. We run an online CPD service for Gaelic games coaches If you want to sign up to our services, where we provide weekly and daily coaching resources for our 700 strong group of coaches, community of coaches, head over onto our website, www.dsscoaching.ie. By listening to this pod, by being a supporter of this podcast, you can get 20% off your first monthly or annual subscription. Use the coupon code POD20, that's POD20, to get 20% off our membership services over on dsscoaching.ie. I'm Ciaran Deely from the Locker Room Podcast.